Sabian, also sometimes incorrectly known as Imurite, was an old South Arabian language spoken in Yemen from c. 1000 BC to the 6th century AD, by the Sabians. It was used as a written language by some other peoples of ancient Yemen, including the Imurites, Ashadites, Surwahites, Humlanites, Gehamanites, and Radmanites. The Sabian language belongs to the South Arabian subgroup of the Semitic group of the Afro-Asiatic language family. Sabian is distinguished from the other members of Old South Arabian by the use of h to mark the third person, and as a causative prefix. The other language all use s1 in these cases. Sabian is therefore called an H language, and the others S languages. Script. Sabian was written in the South Arabian alphabet, and like Hebrew and Arabic marked only consonants, the only indication of vowels being with matrixlectionize. For many years the only texts discovered were inscriptions in the formal Masnad script, but in 1973 documents in another minuscule and cursive script were discovered. Dating back to the second half of the 1st century BC, only a few of the latter have so far been published. The South Arabic alphabet used in Eritrea, Ethiopia and Yemen beginning in the 8th century BC later evolved into the Ge'ez alphabet. The Ge'ez language, however, is no longer considered to be a descendant of Sabian, or of Old South Arabian, and there is linguistic evidence that Semitic languages were in use and being spoken in Eritrea and Ethiopia as early as 2000 BC. Sabian is attested in some 1040 dedicatory inscriptions, 850 building inscriptions, 200 legal texts and 1300 short graffiti. No literary texts of any length have yet been brought to light. This paucity of source material, and the limited forms of the inscriptions has made it difficult to get a complete picture of Sabian grammar. Thousands of inscriptions written in a cursive script incised into wooden sticks have been found and date to the Middle Sabian period. These represent letters and legal documents and as such include a much wider variety of grammatical forms. Varieties of Sabian. Sabian, the language of the Kingdom of Saba and later also of Imia, also documented in the Ethiopian Kingdom of Darmot, very well documented. 6,000 inscriptions Old Sabian, mostly Bastrophedan inscriptions from the 9th until the 8th century BC and including further texts in the next 2 centuries from Marib and the Highlands. Middle Sabian, 3rd century BC until the end of the 3rd century AD, the best documented language. The largest corpus of texts from this period comes from the Awwam temple in Marib, Amiritic, Eremitic, the language of the area to the north of Mar and Central Sabian, the language of the inscriptions from the Sabian heartland, South Sabian, the language of the inscriptions from Radman and Imia, Pseudo-Sabian, the literary language of Arabian tribes in Najran, Aram and Kariat al-For Late Sabian, 4th–6th centuries AD. This is the monotheistic period, when the Christianity and Judaism brought Aramaic and Greek influences. In the late Sabian period we find that the ancient names of the gods are no longer mentioned and only one deity, Ramanon, is referred to. The last known inscription in Sabian dates from the year 554 9th AD. The language's eventual extinction was brought about by the later rapid expansion of Islam, bringing with it North Arabic or Mudari, which became the language of culture and writing, totally supplanting Sabian. The dialect used in the West and Yemeni highlands, known as Central Sabian, is very homogeneous and generally used as the language of the inscriptions. Divergent dialects are usually found in the area surrounding the Central Highlands, such as the important dialect of the city of Aram in the eastern Aldorf. Inscriptions in the Aramic dialect, which is heavily influenced by North Arabic, are also generally considered a form of Sabian. The Himyarites appeared in the late 2nd century BC, later taking over the Sabian kingdom, and ultimately ruling all of Yemen from their capital at Zafar. The Himyarites spoke a Semitic language but not a South Arabic language, nevertheless using Sabian as a written language. Phonology. Vowels. Since Sabian is written in an abjad script leaving vowels unmarked, little can be said for certain about the vocalic system. Based on other Semitic languages, however, it is generally presumed that it had at least the short vowels a, I and u, which would have occurred both short and long a, I, u. In Old Sabian, the long vowels u and I are sometimes indicated using the letters for w and y as matralexionize. In the Old period, this is used mainly in word final position, but in Middle and Late Sabian it also commonly occurs medially. Sabian has no way of writing the long vowel a, but in later inscriptions in the Radmanite dialect the letter h is sometimes infixed in plurals where it is not etymologically expected. Thus bnhy instead of the usual bny. It is suspected that this infix represents the vowel a. Long vowels u and I certainly seem to be indicated in forms such as the personal pronouns hmw, the verbal form ykwn, and in enclitic particles mw, and my, probably used for emphasis. Diphthongs. In the Old Sabian inscriptions, the Proto-Semitic diphthongs or an I seem to have been retained, being written with the letters W and Y. In the later stages, the same words are increasingly found without these letters, which leads some scholars to the conclusion that they had by then contracted to O and E consonants. Sabian, like Proto-Semitic, contains 3 sibilant phonemes, represented by distinct letters. Unfortunately, the exact phonetic nature of these sounds is still uncertain. In the early days of Sabian studies, Old South Arabian was transcribed using Hebrew letters. The transcriptions of the alveolars or postvelar fricatives remained controversial. After a great deal of uncertainty in the initial period, the lead was taken by the transcription chosen by Nicolaus Rhodokanakis and others for the corpus Inscriptionum Semiticarum, until A.F.L. Beeston proposed replacing this with the representation with S followed by the subscripts 1 to 3. This latest version has largely taken over the English-speaking world, while in the German-speaking area, for example, the older transcription signs, which are also given in the table below, are more widespread. They were transcribed by Beeston as S1, S2, and S3. Bearing in mind the latest reconstructions of the Proto-Semitic sibilants, we can postulate that S1 was probably pronounced as a simple S, or S2 was probably a lateral fricative L, and S1 may have been realized as an affricate T. The difference between the 3 sounds is maintained throughout Old Sabian and Middle Sabian, but in the late period S1 and S3 merge. The subscript n did not start appearing until after the early Sabaean period. Interestingly, the Middle Sabian Haramitic dialect often shows the change S3 greater than S1, for example, Ks 1wt, Normal Sabian Ks 3w. The exact nature of the emphatic consonants Q, S, T, Z and D also remains a matter for debate. Were they pharyngealized as in modern Arabic or were they glottalized as in Ethiopic? There are arguments to support both possibilities. In any case, beginning with Middle Sabian, the letters representing S and Z are increasingly interchanged, which seems to indicate that they have fallen together as one phoneme. The existence of bilabial fricative F as a reflex of the Proto-Semitic *p is partly proved by Latin transcriptions of names. In Late Sabian, D and Z also merge. In Old Sabian, the sound N only occasionally assimilates to a following consonant, but in the later periods this assimilation is the norm. The minuscule Zabur script does not seem to have a letter that represents the sound Z, and replaces it with D instead. For example, MFDR, written in the Musnad script as MFZR. Sabian consonants. Grammar. Personal pronouns. As in other Semitic languages, Sabian had both independent pronouns and pronominal suffixes. The attested pronouns, along with suffixes from Catalanian and Hadramautic, are as follows. No independent pronouns have been identified in any of the other South Arabian languages. First and second person independent pronouns are rarely attested in the monumental inscription, but possibly for cultural reasons. The likelihood was that these texts were neither composed nor written by the one who commissioned them. Hence they use third-person pronouns to refer to the one who is paying for the building and dedication or whatever. The use of the pronouns in Sabian corresponds to that in other Semitic languages. The pronominal suffixes are added to verbs and prepositions to denote the object, thus, qtlhmw, he killed him, hmrhmyt, pound, Talib poured for them. Both when the suffixes are added to nouns they indicate possession. bdhw, his slave. The independent pronouns serve as the subject of nominal and verbal sentences. Mr. T, you are the Lord. HMWF HMDW, they thanked. Nouns. Case, number and gender. Old South Arabian nouns fall into two genders, masculine and feminine. The feminine is usually indicated in the singular by the ending t. bl, husband, blt, wife, hgr, city, fnwt, canal. Sabian nouns have forms for singular, dual and plural. The singular is formed without changing the stem. The plural can however be formed in a number of ways even in the very same word. Inner plurals. As in Classical Arabic they're frequent. Prefix. byt, houses, from byt, house, t suffix. Especially frequent in words having the m prefix. mhfdt, towers, from mhfd, tower. Combinations. For example, prefix and t suffix. hrfd, years, from hrf, year. bytt, houses, from byt, house. Without any external grammatical sign. fnw, canals, from fnwt, canal. y and fix. hrwf, hryf, hryfd, years, from hrf, year. Reduplicational plurals are rarely attested in Sabian. llt, gods, from l, god. External plurals. In the masculine the ending differs according to the grammatical state. In the feminine the ending is t, which probably represents asterisk it. This plural is rare and seems to be restricted to a few nouns. The dual is already beginning to disappear in Old Sabian. Its endings vary according to the grammatical state. hrfn, 2 years, from hrf, year. Sabian almost certainly had a case system formed by vocalic endings. But since vowels were involved they are not recognizable in the writings. Nevertheless a few traces have been retained in the written texts, above all in the construct state. Grammatical states. As in other Semitic languages, Sabian has a few grammatical states, which are indicated by various different endings according to the gender and the number. At the same time, external plurals and duals have their own endings for grammatical state, while inner plurals are treated like singulars. Apart from the construct state known in other Semitic languages, there is also an indeterminate state and a determinate state, the functions of which are explained below. The following are the detailed state endings. The three grammatical states have distinct syntactical and semantic functions. The status indeterminatus marks an indefinite, unspecified thing. SLMM, any statue. The status determinatus marks a specific noun. SLMN, the statue. The status constructus is introduced if the noun is bound to a genitive, a personal suffix or, contrary to other Semitic languages, with a relative sentence, with a pronominal suffix. bdhw, his slave, with a genitive noun. gnhymyfd, both walls of Myfarat, mlkys1b, both kings of Saba, with a relative sentence. KLYS1B T2WDB3WTQDMT4S1BY5WDB6TQDMN7 Mr. YHMW8 All 1 Expeditions 2 Battles 3 and Raids 4 Their 2 Lords 8 Conducted 5 Struck 6 and led 7 Verbs Conjugation. As in other West Semitic languages, Sabian distinguishes between 2 types of finite verb forms: the perfect, which is conjugated with suffixes, and the imperfect, which is conjugated with prefixes. In the imperfect, 2 forms can be distinguished: a short form and a form constructed using the n, which in any case is missing in Sabaean and Adramite. In actual use, it is hard to distinguish the 2 imperfect forms from each other. The conjugation of the perfect and imperfect may be summarized as follows. The perfect is mainly used to describe something that took place in the past, only before conditional phrases, and in relative phrases with a conditional connotation does it describe an action in the present, as in Classical Arabic. For example, WS3HLYHLK Mr. WHMTT and HLK Mr. and HMTT have pleaded guilty. The imperfect usually expresses that something has occurred at the same time as an event previously mentioned, or it may simply express the present or future. 4 moods can be distinguished. Indicative. In Sabian this has no special marker, though it has in some of the other languages. BYS2T, he trades, with the meaning of the perfect. WYQRZYDLBWRHHHTHR, Zaidi died in the month of Hathor. Precative, is formed with L and expresses wishes. WLYHMRNHWLMQHW, may Al-Makahu grant him. Jussive, is also formed with L and stands for an indirect order. LYT, so should it come. Betative, is formed with the negative L. It serves to express negative wishes. WLYHWFDLBM, and no ILB trees may be planted here. The imperative is found in texts written in the Zabaean script on wooden sticks, and has the form FL. For example, WNTFS3HLN look after. Derived stems. By changing the consonantal roots of verbs, they can produce various derivational forms, which change their meaning. In Sabian 6 such stems are attested. Examples: QNY, to receive, greater than HQNY, to sacrifice, to donate. QWM, to decree, greater than HQM, to decree. TQWMW, to bear witness. Syntax. Position of clauses. The arrangement of clauses is not consistent in Sabian. The first clause in an inscription always has the order subject, predicate. The other main clauses of an inscription are introduced by W, and always have, like subordinate clauses, the order predicate, subject. At the same time, the predicate may be introduced by F. Examples: subordinate clauses. Sabian is equipped with a number of means to form subordinate clauses using various conjunctions. Relative clauses. In Sabian, relative clauses are marked by a relativizer like D, L, Minnesota. In free relative clauses this marking is obligatory. Unlike other Semitic languages, in Sabian resumptive pronouns are only rarely found. Vocabulary. Despite the fact that the Sabian vocabulary comes from relative diverse types of inscriptions, nevertheless it stands relatively isolated in the Semitic realm, something that makes it more difficult to analyze. Even given the existence of closely related languages such as Ge'ez and Classical Arabic, only part of the Sabian vocabulary has been able to be interpreted, a not inconsiderable part must be deduced from the context, and some words remain incomprehensible. On the other hand, many words from agriculture and irrigation technology have been retrieved from the works of Yemeni scholars of the Middle Ages and partially also from the modern Yemeni dialects. Foreign loanwords are rare in Sabian. A few Greek and Aramaic words are found in the Rahmanistic, Christian and Jewish period, for example, QLS1N from the Greek kappa, kappa lambda eta sigma iota alpha, church, which still survives in the Arabic alkalis, referring to the church built by Abraham in Sana. Bibliography. A.F. L. Beeston. Sabaean Grammar, Manchester 1984. ISBN 0-9507885-2-X. Leonard Kogan and Andrei Korotayev. Sahidic Languages, Semitic Languages. London. Routledge, 1997. 157-183. N. Niebs. Stein. Ancient South Arabian, in. Roger D. Woodard. The Cambridge Encyclopedia of the World's Ancient Languages. ISBN 0-521-56256-2-S. 454-487. Grammatical Sketch with Bibliography. Maria Hoffner. Altschulderabische Grammatik, Leipzig, 1943. AFL. Beeston, M.A. Gould, W.W. Muller. Reichmans. Sabaean Dictionary, Dictionnaire Sabaean, Almudi Shamas Saba I Leuven La Nerve, 1982. ISBN 2-8017-01947-7. Joan Copeland Biela. Dictionary of Old South Arabic. Sabian Dialects Eisenbrauns, 1982. ISBN 1-57506-919-9. Jacques Reichmans, Walter W. Muller, Yusuf M. Abdullah. Textus du Yemen Antique. Inscrits sur bois. Institut Orientalista, Leuven, 1994. ISBN 2-87723-104-6. Peter Stein. Die Altschulderabischen Minuskulenschriften auf Holzstäbchen aus der Bayerischen Staatsbibliothek in München 1. Die Inschriften der Mittel- und Spätsabaischen Periode. Tübingen U.A. 2010. ISBN 9783803022004.